Hello, my name is Keshwani. That's Keshwani, Keshwani. We are here because we want to prepare for the SAT. We have been solving math problems and the grammar questions out of this book here, the official SAT study guide, the second edition. If you do not own this book already, purchase one immediately. You're going to need it. The problem that we are about to solve is the one that you will find on page number 400. And today is our lesson number 17. The very last problem in the book, on the page rather. Let's take a look at it. They give you a little chart there, which I'm not going to put on the blackboard. You have the book in front of you. And they give you a relationship. They tell you that f of x equals k raised to a, k times a raised to x. The question simply is, what's the value of k and a? Or rather, simply, they're not asking for k and a, they're simply looking for what's the value of a. How much is a? How much is a? That's the question. Now listen, before I go in, which is why I put it on the side here, before I go into this thing, I want to make sure that you understand how to read this thing. I want to make sure that you understand the concept of a function. Many a times, it is a sad story. Many a times I come across my students when they come to me for SAT tutoring. They do not understand the simple concept. I do not know why they have not been taught these things. For example, if I give you a simple function, f of x equals 3 times x. Let's start from the very basics, okay? We're going to do the problem in a second. Let's start from the very basic. First of all, this thing is read as f of x. What the hell does it mean? It means, we're going to learn here. It means there exists a relationship between, let's give it a variable. Let's call this variable a y, between y and x and we are calling that relationship, we are giving it a name, we are calling that relationship f. We are giving it a name. F is the name of the relationship, that's all it is. It is not f times 3, obviously. It's not f times 3, this is how we write it. This is read as f of x. F of x simply means, when you tell somebody f of x, y equals f of x, what did you just tell them? I'm looking for my cap, I'm looking for my pencil to point things with. There's the cap. When you tell somebody y equals f of x, what the hell does it mean? Well, what you just told me is that y equals f of x. Forget about this part right now for the time being. Forget about this part right now. If you tell me that y equals f of x, what you just told me is that there exists a relationship between a variable y, between a variable y and a variable x, and we have chosen to call, we are calling that relationship f. Now watch what happens. What happens if somebody comes up to you and says y equals g of x? It doesn't change anything. What you're telling me is that instead of calling it f, you prefer to call it g. You can call it whatever the hell you want it to call it. It's up to you. Y equals g of x. Students go around saying y equals f of x, but they have no idea what that means. And if you replace that variable from f of x to something else, they freeze. They freeze like a deer caught in a headlight. And if you don't know what the hell that expression means, then that means you don't live in the country. I live in the country, and when you're driving at night time, if a deer comes in front of you, and when the deer sees the headlight, the poor thing doesn't know what to do. He just freezes. He just stands there in the middle of the road. And that's how it is, the students. If you were to change this from f to g, they're like a deer caught in a headlight. They don't know what the hell to do with it. We could call it anything you want. Watch what happens. Y equals p of x. Well, voila. I'm calling the relationship p. I am calling this relationship, whatever relationship that exists between x and y, I'm calling it P. I have not told you what the relationship is yet. I have not told you yet what the relationship is. Whatever that relationship is, I'm calling it P. You can call it anything that you want in the world. Y equals monkey of x, if you like, for crying out loud. I am calling the relationship that exists between x and y. What am I calling it? I'm calling it monkey. You can call it anything you want, anything at all. It does not have to be f. We use f because that's the convention, that's the tradition, because the relationship between the two variables in mathematics, the word for relationship in mathematics, the terminology for relationship between two variables is function. A function means relationship. And because the function happens to start with the letter f, the convention dictates, the tradition dictates that I denote this relationship, I call that relationship f. But I assure you, if you were to call it G or P or monkey, nobody's going to knock on your door in the middle of the night to arrest you. I assure you that. Do you understand? So that's what it is. Let's call it, just to make it interesting, I am going to call it y equals, what should we call it? A of x. I'm going to call that relationship A. Now I'm going to go on and tell you exactly what the relationship is. Let's pretend that the relationship is 3x. So y equals 3x. That's the relationship. Y equals 3x. I'm going to put it here. Y equals 3x. Now what does that tell us? It tells us that when x is 1, y is going to be 3. When x is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. So y is going to be 2. When x is 3, y is going to be 9. Value of y depends on the value of x. Because the value of y changes every time you change the x. This poor guy y depends on the value of x. Because he depends on the value of x, he is called the dependent variable. Dependent. And of course this is the independent. Anyway, so here the relationship that is given to us is k times a raised to x. It's a very complicated relationship. It's not something as simple as 3 times x. Let's call this independent variable, let's call it y, because that's the tradition. We're just going to call it y. Okay, so far so good? All right, we can start our work now. At least now you have some rudimentary appreciation of this terminology, because before, many a times I see students, it is so sad. They come and they speak like a robot, f of x, but they have no idea what the hell that means. And if I stand there and I ask them why f of x, why not g of x, why not monkey of x, or why not whatever, or why not apple of x, they have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that, why do you want to call it f? Let's call it apple. Why not? It's just a name it's just the name of the relationship that exists between the two variables. That's all it is. No, so we need the room now. Now I'm going to do one more thing before we go any further. If you are dealing in the problem, if you were dealing with the problem where you have two equations, watch this. I'm going to erase this part. Y equals 3x, and then there's another relationship in the same problem. Y equals x squared. Then if you're going to call this relationship between x and y, if you're going to call it f of x, then obviously I cannot call this relationship the same name. I cannot give it the same name because somehow we have to distinguish this relationship that exists between y and x and this relationship that exists between the relationship that is here. To distinguish these two relationships, maybe this comes from something else and maybe this comes from a different scenario. We typically use a different symbol. That's what it is. Different symbol, different name means it's a different relationship. But we are not going to go there. We don't need it. So let's continue here. Enough said. So what's the value of A? Well, we're just going to look at our chart. Our chart tells you, here's your x and here's the f of x, which is the value of y. Our chart tells you that when x is -1, the value of y, f of x, the value of the relationship, or value of the x, which is the same thing, is 1/8. When x is 0, it's 1/2. When x is 1, it is 2. So we're going to plug in any of this value for the x. and y in there and figure out the value. That's all it is. Just plug in x equal to 0 in that thing. Y equals k times a raised to x. Why 0? Well, there's a very good reason for it. Why 0? Why do I want to plug in x equal to 0 and not x equal to -1 or x equal to 1? There's a very good relationship. There's a very good reason for it, and the reason is because I'm damn lazy. It makes it much easier to do the calculation when you put in 0. Calculation becomes very simpler. So let's do that here. So we're going to replace x with 0. K times a raised to 0. You see? Now, how much is going to be a raised to 0? Why did I put in 0? You will see it in a second. Because now we do not need to know what a is. Because any number raised to 0 equals 1. You must know this thing. This is something that you have to know. Any number raised to 0 is 1. 100 raised to 0 is 1. So is 37 raised to 0, which is 1. And so is negative 5.3 raised to 0 is 1. And so is 5 raised to 0 is 1. Any number raised to 0, any number in the world, if you raise it to 0, it equals 1. You must know that. So k raised to 0 is 1, which means this is k. And how much is the value of this? How much is the value of this function when x is 0? You see, we replaced. Let me do it in a different color so you can see it. We are substituting 0 for x. Here's our x, and we substitute 0 for it right here. And how much is the value of the function when x equals 0? Right here. When x equals 0, we are told y equals half. So voila, y equals half. There you go, your k equals half. We're not done yet. This is only half the story. Now we know the value of k. We're not interested in the value of k. We want to find the value of a. So now we're going to take another point. Now we know the k. We're going to take another point. Now let's take this point. Let's put it in a different color. I'm going to do it in the blue color now. Now we're going to look at this point. Here they tell you that when x equals 1, y equals 2. So we're going to put that in that function. Y equals k raised to, this is very light, it's not very legible. So when y is 2, here when y is 2, x is 1. And we already know the value of k. K is half. K is half a raised to 1. Voila. Voila. We are almost there. How much is a raised to 1? Well, any number raised to 1 is just a number itself. So what we have here is 2 times 1/2 times a. Let's multiply both sides by 2. Let's multiply both sides by 2. Both sides of the equation by 2, so we can get rid of this 2 at the bottom. And therefore your a, voila, equals 4. We are done. A equals 4. That is the end of the story. As I warned you before from the very beginning, this was a level 4 question. This wasn't an easy or a medium question. This is the level 4 questions. As we turn the page, these questions are arranged in the order of difficulty. There are 20 of them. Higher the number, the more difficult they become. As we turn the page number 401, the problem that I will do tomorrow, problem number 19, and the problem that I will do on day after tomorrow, problem number 20, they are both level 5. This was a level 4. Level 5, when the college board tells you that the question is level 5, that's their euphemistic way of saying it's a pure hell. I just used a vocabulary word. Let's learn it before I wrap it up. I need the room. Where should I put it? Tell you what, let's put it right here. We're going to end our lesson today with a vocabulary lesson. It does not hurt to work on your vocabulary at the same time while you're working on the math problem. Vocabulary is very, very important if you want to get a decent score in the SAT. And if you want to improve your vocabulary, you can watch my vocabulary videos on my channel there. Just make a habit, have a discipline, and learn all the words. Euphemism, have you ever heard of it? I'm looking at my list here to see if I have actually covered it in my vocabulary videos. It turns out that I have. Day number 9. Day number 9. And after I finished explaining one more time what euphemism means, I'm going to use the word again in the context so you'll see how it is used. Day number 9 is just type in vocabulary. Just type in vocabulary. Day 9 in my name, and it will pop right up. Vocabulary, day 9, Keshwani, it will pop right up. What does euphemism mean? Euphemism means you use a different way of saying something, a way that is considered less offensive, less rude. For example, let me give you a simple example. These days, another way of saying euphemism is when you want to be politically correct. So people are no longer blind in this world, they are visually challenged. People are no longer retarded, they are mentally challenged. My wife tells me that she is not short, she is vertically challenged. People are not fat, they are just pleasantly rotund. I'm being silly, obviously. So euphemism means that you say something that in a very polite and a very nice way. So I'm going to use euphemism now. I'm going to use a euphemistic term to explain to you what level 5 means. Next two problems that we're going to do on next page, problem number 19 and 20, they are level 5. Now when the College Board tells you that a math problem is a level 5 problem, that's their euphemistic way of saying it's the pure hell. And we'll deal with the hell tomorrow. Okay? Bye now.